My name is Helena Voss. Last night, during a family dinner I hosted to bring everyone together, I overheard my own son and his wife laughing about putting me in a care home. They said I was no longer useful because I donated half my fortune to charity. They thought I was asleep when I heard them say, "Once she's out of the way, the rest is ours." They did not know I had already changed my will, and what happened the next morning changed everything. I never expected my life to come to this point. After losing my husband 5 years ago, I devoted myself to building something meaningful with the wealth we had earned together. I believed money should be used to heal, not just to sit in an account. So I donated half of it to children's hospitals, community shelters, and families in crisis. It was the first time in years I felt true peace. I thought my family would be proud of me, or at the very least, supportive. Instead, their reactions were quiet. My son, Ryan, smiled weakly and said, "That's generous, Mom," but his eyes revealed disappointment. His wife, Lydia, tried to hide her shock by complimenting my generosity to others, while clearly calculating what was left for herself. Even with their strange responses, I still wanted to bring the family together. I believed that a shared dinner in my home would help us reconnect. My granddaughter, Chloe, was the only one who hugged me with real happiness when she sat beside me and asked if I could teach her how to bake her grandfather's favorite pie the next morning. That simple kindness brought warmth to my heart. Meanwhile, Ryan and Lydia spent the evening pretending to ask about my health, but I could feel their real concern was not my heartbeat, it was my bank account. I had spent my life thinking a parent's love was enough to keep a family together. I believed that raising my son with good values meant he would always respect me. But as I looked across the dinner table that night, I saw two versions of love. One from Chloe, pure and genuine, and one from her parents, controlled by greed and entitlement. I trusted my heart, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet fear began to rise. I knew something was wrong, but I did not know how deeply it would cut until I heard the truth with my own ears. If you're watching this story right now, make sure you subscribe and tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from. The next part will shock you even more. As the dinner plates were being cleared away and the house began to grow quiet, I stepped into the hallway to get my reading glasses from my bedroom. That was when I heard my son's voice coming from the kitchen. At first, I thought he was speaking softly about my health or the dinner, but when I listened more closely, I heard him laugh in a way I had not heard since he was a teenager, making fun of someone at school. Lydia laughed with him, her voice light and mocking. Ryan said, "We need to speed things up before she does something else stupid with what's left." Lydia replied, "I already looked up the best care facility. It's quiet, far away, and once she's in there, her signature on anything will be invalid. The lawyer said if we claim she's confused, we can take over the estate." I froze where I stood. My own son was planning to take away my independence, not out of concern, but because he thought I had become useless. As I stood there, invisible to them, something inside me broke. But it was not my spirit, it was my trust. I felt a pain much deeper than any illness. It was the pain of realizing the people I raised, loved, and sacrificed for now saw me as a burden in the way of their lifestyle. Lydia continued, "She's old and too emotional. She'll agree to anything if we make her think it's for her safety." To hear my daughter-in-law speak of me as if I were already gone from my own life made my hands tremble, not with fear, but with clarity. They were not planning to care for me. They were planning to control me. I quietly stepped back into the shadows as they walked into the dining room again, smiling as if nothing had been said. Ryan patted my shoulder and asked if I wanted help getting to bed. His voice was gentle, but now I could hear the emptiness behind every word. I told him I was fine and watched him and Lydia gather their coats. Lydia kissed me on the cheek and said, "We'll talk tomorrow about the care arrangements. It's all for your comfort." I nodded calmly, even though my heart was beating hard in my chest. My granddaughter, Chloe, lingered behind them. She ran to me and wrapped her arms around me tightly. "I love you, Grandma," she said softly. In that moment, I knew love still existed in my home, but only in the heart of a child whose spirit had not yet been corrupted by greed. After everyone left, I sat alone at the dining table, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I could still hear their laughter in my ears. I looked around my home. Every wall, every picture frame, every piece of furniture held the memory of my life, my merit, my sacrifice. I realized I had been living under an illusion that blood guarantees loyalty. The truth stood before me as painfully clear as the ticking clock above the doorway. My son and his wife did not see me as a mother anymore. They saw me as a door blocking their entry into a life of luxury. They believed I had foolishly given away their inheritance. They were wrong. What I had given away was money. What I still owned was power, the power to decide what happens next. That night, as I lay in bed, I did not feel anger. I felt a deep sense of responsibility. This was no longer about money. It was about dignity. It was about teaching the people I loved the most that a parent is not a trophy to be claimed at the end of life. A parent is a human being deserving of respect, regardless of age, wealth, or physical strength. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and called Mr. Whitman, my lawyer. He was surprised to hear from me so late, but as soon as I told him what happened, his voice became firm. "Helena, I'll be at your home first thing in the morning," he said. I ended the call and closed my eyes, not with sadness, but with purpose. I was done being silent. I was done hoping they would change. Now it was my turn to act, not out of bitterness, but out of truth. Because when love is gone, justice must step in. The next morning, I woke with a calm sense of purpose I had not felt in years. The pain of what I heard at the dinner no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a warning that had saved me just in time. When my lawyer, Mr. Whitman, arrived, I was already seated at the dining table with a folder of documents and old photographs of my life that I had pulled out during the night. He listened quietly as I explained everything I had overheard, how Ryan and Lydia discussed putting me away in a care facility, how they planned to take legal control over my estate by claiming I was no longer mentally stable, and how they had already begun preparing to sell my home behind my back. Mr. Whitman did not interrupt. He only nodded and said, "Helena, you have full legal capacity, and we will make sure your voice is the only one that matters." I felt tears in my eyes, not from sadness, but from relief that someone still saw me as a person with rights instead of a problem to be handled. We spent hours going through the documents. I transferred all remaining assets into a living trust that clearly outlined my wishes. The house, investments, and remaining accounts were placed into a secure structure that only I could change while alive, and upon my passing, control would go to two people: Grace, who had stood by me in both health and sickness, and my granddaughter Chloe, who loved me without condition. I made sure to create an educational fund for Chloe that would support her future, not just with money, but with guidance and moral foundation, something her parents had clearly forgotten. Grace would take stewardship of the home, not to claim it as her own, but to continue the charity initiatives I had begun, turning the property into a retreat for elderly support and community care. As each page was signed, I felt lighter, as if every stroke of the pen was me reclaiming not only my future, but my dignity. While we worked, Grace arrived and saw the documents spread across the table, her face filled with concern. She asked if everything was all right. I told her the truth plainly. I explained what Ryan and Lydia had planned, how they had laughed about locking me away, and how they had spoken as though I were a burden to be removed. Grace's eyes filled with tears, and she placed her hand on mine. She said, "You are not alone, Helena. I will stand with you through this." Her voice did not shake. It held strength. In that moment, I saw the difference between those who love for benefit and those who love from the heart. I looked at her and said, "That is why I am choosing to leave my legacy in the hands of people who value life over wealth." She nodded, understanding that what we were doing was not revenge. It was protection. Later that afternoon, I received a call from Ryan. He did not ask how I was feeling. Instead, he said, "Mom, Lydia and I found a wonderful care facility for you. They have private rooms and excellent medical support. We booked you a consultation for tomorrow." His tone was cold, but packaged as concern. like poison wrapped in silk. I felt no fear when I answered. I simply said, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I have already made arrangements." There was a pause. His voice tightened. "What arrangements?" I did not reply. I ended the call and let the silence speak for itself. That night, I sat in my living room with Chloe, who had come to stay the weekend. She curled up beside me and asked, "Grandma, are you sad?" I looked at her and answered honestly, "I was sad, but now I am strong." I asked her if she knew why I donated our money to charity. She nodded and said, "Because you want other people to have a chance to be happy." Her simple answer reminded me of who I truly was. Not a woman losing value, but a woman rediscovering her purpose. I kissed her forehead and promised her that everything I was doing was to ensure she would grow up believing in kindness, not greed. As the sun went down, I stood in front of the window, watching the light fade across the garden, and made a silent vow. They tried to strip me of control, but instead, they woke a fire in me. I was not going to wait for their betrayal to become my reality. I had already made my move, and soon, they would see that the woman they underestimated still held every card in her hand. What they believed was the end of my independence was the beginning of their reckoning. The next morning, my living room looked nothing like a family home. It felt more like a courtroom, and every heartbeat reminded me that this was the moment everything would be revealed. I sat calmly in my armchair while my lawyer, Mr. Whitman, arranged neatly stacked documents on the coffee table. Grace stood quietly near the back of the room, and my granddaughter Chloe sat close by, holding my hand with innocent trust. I could already hear Ryan and Lydia before they entered. They were speaking loudly in the hallway, their tone filled with satisfaction, as if they were moments away from claiming their prize. When they stepped inside, Lydia gave me a polished smile and said, "Mom, we know this is all overwhelming for you, but once the will is officially transferred, you can focus on rest and healing." She said it as if she had already won. Ryan shook Mr. Whitman's hand confidently and said, "Let's get this over with." They sat across from me, their expressions filled with quiet arrogance, believing they were about to take control of everything I had ever built. Mr. Whitman cleared his throat and began reading. He started with a summary of my life's accomplishments, my late husband's legacy, and the assets remaining in my name. Ryan leaned forward, Lydia straightened in her chair, and Chloe squeezed my hand, sensing the tension in the air. Then came the moment that shifted the entire atmosphere. Mr. Whitman read, "This will has been revised to honor the individuals who have shown genuine loyalty, love, and support to me in my final years. Therefore, full authority over my estate, properties, accounts, and trusts will be passed to Grace Miller, caretaker and friend, and to my granddaughter, Chloe Voss." Ryan's head snapped up so quickly that his chair nearly tipped backward. Lydia's face drained of color as if she had been hit with ice water. She blurted, "That must be a mistake. She's not family." Mr. Whitman calmly continued reading. "Specific language has been included to exclude Ryan Voss and Lydia Voss from receiving any direct or indirect financial benefit due to their demonstrated intention to place Helena Voss in a care facility against her will for personal gain." Ryan's composure shattered. He slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "This is manipulation. She's confused. She's being taken advantage of." Mr. Whitman remained calm and said, "Mrs. Voss is of sound mind. We have medical proof of full cognitive clarity and video documentation dated last night." Lydia stood up and pointed at Grace. "This woman has brainwashed her. This is financial abuse." At that exact moment, Mr. Whitman reached for the remote and turned on the television. The room fell silent as a video played. It was footage from the hallway during the dinner. Ryan's voice filled the room. "Once she's locked away, we'll list the house immediately." Lydia's voice followed. "She won't fight it. She has no one left to defend her." The video continued, playing their laughter as they discussed removing me from my own home as if I were an item to be disposed of. Ryan's entire body went still. Lydia covered her mouth, stunned that their own words were now undeniable truth. Grace stepped forward, not with triumph, but with quiet sorrow. She looked at me, and I nodded gently. Chloe, still holding my hand, whispered, "Grandma, I'm glad you told the truth." Her small voice carried more power than all the shouting that had filled the room moments earlier. Mr. Whitman continued reading the will, explaining every clause that legally protected me and my estate from any challenge. He stated that Ryan and Lydia were permanently barred from controlling or influencing any of my medical or financial decisions. Finally, he read the closing line of the document, which I had written myself. "Love is not proven by blood, but by heart. I leave my legacy to the ones who stood with me, not the ones who stood to gain from me." Ryan's anger turned into desperation. His voice shook as he said, "Mom, you can't do this to your own child." I looked at him with steady eyes and replied, "You stopped being my child when you decided I was an obstacle instead of a mother." Lydia tried to regain control, saying, "We were only trying to help manage your life." I responded, "You were trying to manage my death." The room was quiet, except for the sound of Ryan's heavy breathing and Chloe's soft heartbeat against my arm. The officers Mr. Whitman had called stood by the doorway, not to arrest anyone, but to ensure no one threatened me or interfered with the execution of the will. For the first time, Ryan and Lydia were powerless. Not because I took power from them, but because their own actions had exposed who they truly were. As Mr. Whitman closed the file and stood up, the truth settled into the room like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. This was not the end of my life. It was the moment I reclaimed it. This was the day my voice rose above manipulation. The day I reminded everyone that a mother is not a possession. She is a person with a heart, a soul, and the right to decide her own legacy. And I had done exactly that. When the truth finally settled and the door closed behind my son and his wife, I felt a stillness in my heart that I had not known in years. It was not a stillness of loneliness, but of peace. The weight of fear, disappointment, and betrayal had been lifted, not because justice had been served in a loud or dramatic way, but because I had reclaimed my right to choose love over manipulation. As I sat in that quiet room, the same room where my family had once gathered for birthdays and holidays, I realized that the true inheritance I wanted to leave behind was not measured in money, but in the message of dignity. Grace walked over to me, placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, and said she would honor every part of my wish by turning my home into a place where older people would never be treated as burdens. Tears formed in her eyes as she added, "Your story will save many others from suffering in silence." Chloe then came to me and sat on my lap the way she did when she was a small child. She laid her head on my chest and whispered, "Grandma, I will always love you for you, not for what you have." In that moment, I held her close and knew that everything I had done, every painful truth I had faced, had led to this moment of pure love and legacy. I had not lost a family. I had found the real meaning of. In the days that followed, Ryan made several attempts to call me. At first, his messages were filled with anger, accusing me of betrayal. Then they turned into guilt-driven apology when he realized there was no way to fight what had been legally documented. He wanted access, control, and influence, but what he truly needed was something no amount of money could buy: a softened heart and a renewed soul. I decided not to block his call, but I also chose not to respond. There are some lessons life must teach through silence. Lydia, who had always been more concerned with appearances, tried to save her reputation by telling friends that I had been brainwashed into giving away my estate. But no amount of gossip could erase the truth that had been recorded in their own voices. Their actions had not only excluded them from my will, they had excluded themselves from my trust. Meanwhile, life inside my home began to change in the most beautiful way. Grace started organizing community support programs, inviting local families to come together for meals, counseling sessions, and elder care workshops. My dining room table, once filled with quiet tension, was now filled with laughter, prayer, and genuine connection. Chloe began helping Grace design a garden outside, a garden where flowers would be planted in honor of every elderly person who had been abandoned or mistreated by their own families. She called it the Garden of Promise, and she said it would stand as a reminder that no one deserves to be forgotten just because they grow old. Watching her plant the first rose bush with her small hands reminded me that while some hearts grow cold with greed, others bloom with compassion. As the weeks passed, I noticed a transformation within myself. I no longer woke up thinking about what I had lost. Instead, I woke up excited about what I was building, a legacy rooted in kindness, not wealth. I realized that giving my fortune to charity had not impoverished me. It had enriched me in a way money never could. My true wealth was never in my bank account. It was in my ability to influence lives, restore dignity, and protect the innocent. The betrayal of my son did not define me. It revealed to me the true purpose of the life I had been given. One afternoon, as I sat in the garden with Chloe reading beside me, I thought about the viewers who would hear this story, people who may be sitting alone, wondering if their value has faded just because they are aging or no longer financially powerful. I want them to know what I learned through great pain and great awakening. Your worth is not determined by what you can give others materially, but by the light you carry in your heart. When people try to measure your value in dollars, it is because they have lost sight of their own humanity. And when you stand up for your dignity, even when it hurts, you do not just save yourself, you inspire others to stand too. My story did not end in a nursing home or a courtroom battle. It ended with a new beginning, one built on love that asked for nothing in return. It ended with a legacy that would grow long after I am gone, not in the hands of those who tried to bury me, but in the hearts of those who believed in me. I chose not to cling to what I had. I chose to plant it, and now it is blooming into something far greater than any inheritance could ever be. If this story touched your heart, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Your support helps share these powerful stories with the world, and your voice matters.